Alright, so tonight we're going to review Parashat Matot two Parashiyot, and I think that it's not just a coincidence that these Parashiyot are read towards the end of the year. After all, this Friday is Rosh Chodesh Av, so we have 2 months left of the Jewish year, Av and Elul. So as you will see, it's not coincidental that these Parashiyot are read towards the end of the year, especially since Sefer Devarim, which is the following parasha, we have a lot of rebuke, a lot of tochacha from Moshe Rabbeinu right before he passes away. He has a lot to say. He has a lot to say about what has gone on for the past 40 years in the desert to a generation that was not around necessarily in Egypt, to a generation that may not have seen all the miracles and experienced what their forefathers experienced. Nonetheless, he has a lot to say to the Jewish people. This is not just about a certain group of people who need to hear what he has to say. He has a lot to say to the future generations. We need to look back at what happened during the entire 40 years and ask ourselves, is there anything that we can do to make sure that all of our mistakes, the mistakes of our forefathers, are not repeated? After all, we know that anything that is documented in the Torah is for us to learn from. And that is why I call this series lessons, moral lessons that we can learn from the Parasha. Not just the highlights, not just about what the Parasha is discussing, but what is there for us to learn. And there's a lot to learn from every single Parasha. So these Parashiyot contain rebuke as well, even though they're not so apparent as they are later on. From time to time, there are certain lessons that are taught, certain mitzvot that we receive, that if you analyze the mitzvah and you ask yourself, why is this being said at this point in time, you will realize that there is a need for it. As I've explained in the past, there's an important rule called En Mukdam u'Meuchar b'Torah. There's no particular order, historical order of the events in the Torah. Certain things are out of order. Why? Because obviously there's a need to place certain episodes, certain incidents adjacent to others in order for us to be able to learn whatever lesson it is that the Torah wants us to learn. So in Parashat Mas'eh, for example, we will be talking about the travels. Moshe Rabbeinu reviews the travels, the various stops and stations where the Jewish people were in the desert. Even though there are other important ideas that are conveyed to us in both Parashiyot, I will be stressing the ones that I think are important for this class and how they relate to the end of the year. So what is the reason to describe the travels? What importance does it have to state, this is where we were, this is where we stopped? Imagine somebody going cross country, and after a number of years, he shares with his kids an album. We were here in the Grand Canyon, and we were here in this place. Okay, perhaps he wants to do so because he wants to review the experiences that I may have had. By the way, at this stop, we had a flat tire. So, of course, it's interesting to discuss the highlights of the trip, the good and the bad. Does Moshe need to do that? What's the importance of telling us what happened in every single stop? So the simple explanation is to remind us of our hashgacha, that throughout the 40 years in the desert, who was with us, who guided us, who took care of us, who protected us? It was Hashem. So there's an importance to highlighting and to emphasizing that Hashem was with us at all times, and He will be with you in the future when I'm gone. He's about to go. He's about to leave this world. Hashem has been with you. He took care of you. And you recall this and this miracle, you didn't have water, you didn't have food. Who took care of you? So in order to emphasize the hashgacha, the divine providence of Hashem that is always with them, he discusses the various stops. this is the simple explanation of reviewing the stops, because they're about to enter the land of Israel. They're at the end of their journey in the desert. So now let's go back and see what happened from the very beginning when you left Egypt until this moment. In the future, God will also be with you wherever you go, and you will be going in many places. You will be going to many countries. So in order to strengthen that emunah, that faith that Hashem is with them, that He leads the way, that you can always turn to Him and pray to Him, He mentions the travels or the stops in the desert. It is also important to talk about these stops, because the rabbis tell us that these 42 stops represent the stops that the Jewish people will make in the long diaspora. So it's not just a stop. These stops contain valuable information about future stops and stations. So this is where you stopped in the desert, but just remember that in the future you will be making stops in the long diaspora, and these stops in the desert correspond to those stops. Rabbi Chaim Volozhin, a famous student of the Gaon of Vilna, who lived about 200 years ago, said that when he was asked, where would the last stop be? This is over 200 years ago, he was asked this question. And when he was asked, where will the last stop be? He said, America. Not too many people spoke about America in those days. But as soon as he said America, he began to cry. And they asked him, why are you crying? What's this about America that you're crying? And he says it will not be an easy stop, because assimilation will be very, very strong in that place called America. They will be very, very distant. Many, many Jews will be very distant from Judaism at that point. But it's going to be the last stop. So if you want to know where you're going after America, unless it's, of course, there's few individuals that may be going to some other country, from here, the next stop is Israel. There's no other place. So it's interesting that somehow he saw or he knew about that stop. The last stop of this long diaspora will be in the United States. So all of this is from above. Where we headed, where we're going to end up, is all controlled from above. And the same is true with the stops that people make. Not just the Jewish people as a whole, but individuals, where we go. As the rabbis tell us in the Zohar and in the Gemara, wherever your feet are supposed to be, that's where they will take you. You think you make the decision, but the decisions are made above. There's a reason why people have to be in a certain spot. There's a reason why they're going to buy a house in a certain street. All of that, mechuvan milemala, all of that is preordained from above. What can be added, however, is that this description of the stops is not just talking about stops in life, but also about the human being's development. Think of the physical development, which is obvious to us. The physical development begins when the human being is a baby. And he slowly develops where after a certain point he doesn't need diapers anymore. After a certain point the teeth begin to come out. After a certain point he's no longer crawling, he's walking. Right? He's growing. After a little bit of time he enjoys certain toys. He wants his bicycle. After that, he wants his car, his driver's license. You see, teenagers. After that, he becomes an adult, he gets married. This is what we recognize as the physical, gradual development of a human being. But in the same way that there's a physical development, there should be a spiritual development. And many, many times that spiritual development of an individual, his spiritual growth, lags behind. It doesn't keep up with the physical development. So you can have an adult, he's 50 years old or more, but spiritually he's like a little baby. So the steps that Moshe describes can also be describing this development. Make sure that as you go through life, through the various stages, not stops, but stages in life, make sure that you also take care of your neshama, of your soul, that you develop spiritually, not just physically. As I always like to say, if you give a baby, a child, cereal and milk every day, he's going to grow. He could grow even to 6'5", 7 feet or more, depending on the genes, right? Physical development is not so difficult. Just a little bit of cereal and milk, right? But spiritual development requires willpower. It requires direction. And without that, we won't get anywhere. We won't accomplish. Today, you have less illiterate people than you had in the past. You know what illiterate means? Illiterate people that don't know how to read and write. More people are educated today than in the past. But there was such a concept, whether it was in Iran or elsewhere, that people were illiterate. They did not know how to read and write. They knew the language, they picked it up, but to read and write requires, of course it still is.
30% of Iranian are illiterate.
Yeah. And the more difficult the alphabet, the more, the chances are that people will be illiterate. There are a lot of Chinese people that are illiterate because there's several thousand characters, thousands of characters that one needs to learn by heart in order to be able to write or to read. Today, they have a more modern type of writing in China. There's the traditional writing, which is more complex, more intricate, and there's the more standardized, simpler Chinese. It's easier and faster to write. But still, you still have many, many characters that you need to memorize. So if you don't go to school, you're not going to be able to read a book, a newspaper. So spiritual development is the same thing. There are people that remain illiterate, not fully developed, as a result of them not taking or not making the efforts to learn and to do whatever it takes to grow. Let me give you an example of what I mean by spiritually illiterate. You may have seen it yourself, where there are certain individuals who put on tefillin one time in their life. You know when? On the bar mitzvah day. A lot of American Jews, and maybe even other countries, a bar mitzvah for a Jew was always something important. And it was a celebration. Definitely so. That is when the child commits himself. He commits himself, really, to abide by the Torah, to keep the mitzvot. He's an adult now. So part of being an adult Jew is to put on tefillin every day, except for Shabbat and holidays. But somehow, after that first day, after the ceremony, the following day, those tefillin are put away somewhere in a closet. Never to be seen again, perhaps never to be put on. Not everyone, but a lot of Jews like that. Why? Where's the commitment? Do they know what the tefillin is all about? To many of them, it was just a ceremony. It was not a real day to commit oneself to a life of observance of Torah mitzvot. So spiritually, they're lacking. Their life is empty, devoid of commitment to Torah mitzvot. So physically, they can be strong. Maybe they even do exercise. They lift weights. They play sports. And perhaps they're intelligent too because they went to school and college. Could be, but that's all physical. Spiritually, they're not necessarily more refined. They're not necessarily holier. That was never undertaken, even though it should have been undertaken. So when talking about stops, that's what I like to stress. It's not just about physical stops which we all make, and many of us make many stops in various places. We need to remember that there are spiritual stops or spiritual stages which we need to go through if we want to develop properly. So Moshe Rabbeinu, in talking about these various stages or stops, points out the places Efo shenichshalnu, where we made mistakes, where we stumbled. It's important, so that we should know that we may have stops in our life, incidents, where we stumble, where we make mistakes. Otherwise, why tell it to us? Review all those places where you complained to Hashem, where you did this. Yeah, but those particular complaints or issues that arose hopefully will not repeat themselves. We won't be in that same desert. But we may be in a similar experience. What will a Jew do who's hungry? And Moshe's not around. There are no prophets. Will he cry? Will he complain? So obviously all of this is important because it will somehow affect us in the future. But that's on the level of a nation. Right now we need to focus on the individual level, not just on the level of a nation. The nation, of course, will have many challenges, persecutions, anti-Semitism, and so forth. How do we deal with it? But even on the individual level, people's lives are very, very different. You can have people who are very prosperous, people who are very poor, people who are not doing well because of some illness, some other problem in the family. We have stages. You have individuals who've had it very good for 20 years, doing very well, all of a sudden they're bankrupt. So that bankruptcy is a stop in their life, a stage. Very, very different kind of stage. Now what? So some of those stops are going to be good stops. And some of those stops, I'm not going to say bad, but are going to be difficult, challenging. You know where you see this very, very clearly? In an experience called NDE, near-death experience, which I have lectures about, where people actually died temporarily, Mavet Klini. They went up, or they saw themselves going up to heaven. And some people went farther, some people did not go as far. People saw certain things in common, Jews and non-Jews. I'm not going to go through all the details of what they see. Just I want to point out one very important concept that certain individuals did see, depending on how far they went. Not only did they see their relatives, those who have left this world, not only did they see a very beautiful shining light which they were drawn to, yes, but they also somehow at some point saw a video of their entire life go by quickly. And in that video, which contained various frames, they saw some beautiful frames, and they saw some ugly ones too, which they were very embarrassed from. The neshama, the soul, is pure. So it is not indifferent and unsensitive. When it sees something bad, it feels ashamed of itself. And that is a form of Gehinnom, a form of hell. When you are embarrassed and you are pained by your actions, you see your whole life go through, and how terrible of me to have done that, to have said that, whatever it may be. So they show the neshama a quick review, right? That's what we're talking about. A review of the stops, so far. Because she or he have not died yet. They're going back. This is a near-death experience. They're coming right back. In the meantime, they're seeing a number of stops. And some of them are nice, and some of them are not so nice. So what is this for? To teach them a lesson. Listen, pay attention. Look what you've done to yourself. Look what you've done to others. So keep in mind, you're going back, but fix whatever you can. Hopefully they will be given a chance to fix. That's why they're sending them back. Otherwise, why send them back? Isn't it nicer upstairs than it is down here, at least for some people? A lot of people said, I want to stay. No, your time has not come yet. You still have something to accomplish, they're told. And it's not necessarily because of their children that they left behind or other unfinished business. What we think is unfinished business. Upstairs, they have something else in mind about unfinished business. We all have a unique mission. You still have to spend time down here below, especially if there are things that you need to fix, need to correct. Certain things that were not done properly. So this entire video is for the benefit of the individual that he should take into consideration. There are certain things that I need to improve. Based on this, we can understand right now the common denominator, hamechaneh meshutaf, of the two parashiyot. Even though the two parashiyot, Matot and Mas'eh, are quite different, there is a common denominator that I want to bring out. In Parashat Matot, there is an emphasis in the very beginning on nedarim. There's the whole discussion about vows, especially vows that a woman has made, a girl has made, whether she is in her father's home or in her husband's home. Interesting. It's a whole discussion in Torah. What happens to those vows? Can they be canceled or not? Now, why do we need to know about vows? Why are vows so important? Somebody said something that he wants to do or he does not want to do. Right? A vow could be that you're holding yourself back from doing something, or that you plan on doing something. You know, rabbis tell us it's always best not to make a vow, because you may forget about it, and vows are serious if you forget about them and you don't keep them. So you're always better off not making a vow. But soon we're going to see that there are times that vows are not only welcome, they're good. But in general, it is true. Be careful not to make vows, not to make nedarim. It's very, very serious if one made a vow, a neder or shavua. He swore, and he doesn't keep it, or he did something to go against it. So in Parashat Matot, we have an emphasis on vows. Why are they so important? So just briefly, in order to understand the importance of vows, we need to go back to the beginning of creation. When man is created, what does it say? Vaypach b'apav nishmat chayim, that God instilled in the human being a living spirit. Nishmat chayim. If you look at the translation in the Targum, in the Aramaic, and in the commentaries, what did the living spirit do for him? It gave him the power of speech. And in that, he is very different from the animal who does not exactly have the power of speech. Yes, I know about parrots. I know about certain birds that can mimic, but that's not the real power of speech. So man is different than the animal in his power of speech. He's different from the animal that he has the ability to exercise free will. There are other differences, but where does the difference lie? In the fact that he has a soul, that he has a neshama. And once that soul enters the physical body, he has the ability, unless there's some physical limitation, he has the ability to express himself through the power of speech. Well, that makes him special. Why give man the power of speech? Obviously, man has a need for it, and it's something important. But this power of speech is also a big source of trouble. Kohelet, Solomon in his book Kohelet, Ecclesiastes says, Kol amal adam lefiu. The majority of sin that man commits, majority of trouble which he gets himself into, amal means trouble, hardships, downfall, is because of his mouth. Ha'aliyot va'yeridot that we have, the ups and downs in life, many of them are caused because of our mouth. The way we use or misuse them can make a big difference in our life. That's what Shlomo Melech is saying. Remember, Kohelet, that's a very, very special book on which I have lectures as well. He describes life. And there he makes a very powerful statement. Remember, Kol amal adam lefiu. A great deal of his downfalls, of his mistakes, his sins, will be as a result of the misuse of the mouth. Right? That's another verse in Mishlei, that life and death depends on one's use or misuse of the tongue. Yeah, exactly same idea. Why? Because man can commit many, many mistakes, or can do a lot of harm, I should say, with one's mouth, very easily. As the Chafetz Chaim of blessed memory says, you know, when one commits a sin, it perhaps requires a certain amount of effort to commit it. It doesn't come so easily just to commit any sin. It may take some time and effort. With opening one's mouth, one can commit a lot of sins, not just one, and very easily, by lying, using foul language, cursing, lashon hara, negative speech, slander. All of this, with the opening of one's mouth, very easily can commit a tremendous amount of sins and cause a lot of harm to other people. Just 2 weeks ago, we had Parashat Balak, and we spoke about Bilam. Where did Bilam have a power? With his speech. To curse. Curse? You can curse someone? Yes. It's for real. And I speak about it in another lecture. The power of speech, where one can curse, but one can also bless. Blessing from one's mouth. Just with words, the words can come true. Yes, words can come true. Words are very powerful. Either as a blessing or, God forbid, as a curse. So what do we see from all of this so far? That the words have a mishkal, they have weight. They're not just words. They're actually very, very powerful, and they can hurt. Let's say not harm. Let's say we're not talking about curses that will harm, whether it's harming someone's reputation or something else. Let's just talk about hurting someone's feelings even. Words are powerful. They have the ability to hurt people's feelings. On the other hand, there's also a positive effect to speech. How is there a positive effect? Have you heard in English they sometimes say, he is a man of his word?
Yes.
Yeah. Why? Why is that so important? Because a word is a word, a promise is a promise. It says something about the human being. Not every human being has a lot of good qualities. He may not be wealthy, he may not be intelligent, he may not be even so generous, but he's a man of his word. There's a certain level of loyalty. You can trust him. That's very important, to be able to trust someone. It used to be, maybe it's still today, people who were in the diamond business, it was a handshake. And what would they say with the handshake?
Mazal u'bracha.
Mazal u'bracha. No, nothing written down. He just gave you a few diamonds. He's trusting you. I don't know about today. Today, the world is changing. There's a lot of fake news, so there's a lot of fake people. So there's a lot of problems. You have to be careful. And I'm not joking. You really have to be extra careful today, because people have told me that even some of their good customers of the past defaulted. Defaulted means either they didn't pay, either they took more than they should have, or whatever.
Run away.
They run away, yeah. But so when we say a man of his word, we're saying something, that this man is serious. He's a very serious individual. He keeps his word. So we see there's something about the man that gives him all this importance because of his word. So apparently, man's word says something about him. All right. In the same way that making a promise and keeping the promise says something about the individual, it contributes towards the fact that we can trust him. The word that a person gives, or the vow that a person makes, can also elevate him. Here we're saying that words can be positive. So we gave the example of a man of his word. But there's something else about speech. It has the ability to elevate the individual to a higher level than he was before. Remember we just said before the importance of spiritual development? How can a person go ahead and develop spiritually? What does he need to do? Well, one of the things that he needs to do is to commit himself. And commitment, itchayvut, comes about not in the mind, by saying. We all have heard the Kabbalistic concept of machshava, dibur, and maaseh. There is thought, there is speech, and there is deed. Deed is very powerful. It's an actual deed. Machshava is important, but all it is a thought. A lot of people think and they dream all day long, but nothing happens with their dreams. In order to make that dream become a reality, you first have to take it to the next stage. The next stage is dibur, speech. That is why teshuvah. Teshuvah is a very important concept, repentance. A person wants to make a change in his life. One of the most important conditions for teshuvah is vidui. Vidui means confession. How do you confess? With words, using your speech. You can't just say in your heart, oh, I feel bad, to yourself. No, you have to verbalize it. If you hurt somebody's feelings, you have to actually approach them and say, I'm sorry. You have to do something. Will your sorry help? Yes, your sorry may help undo some of the damage. The person sees that you regret what you did. If you don't say anything, I'm not going to say anything, I'm just not going to hurt his feelings anymore. That's very nice of you. But the scar is still there. And this is important, very important between husband and wife. Husband and wife men and women who are married to each other, hopefully for many, many years, because they're with each other a lot, they can say all kinds of things that they will later regret. We all make mistakes. We're upset. We say something that we didn't really want to say. And hopefully we take it back if it's not such a nice thing. But imagine somebody not saying anything about an offense, an insult. He insulted his wife, or she insulted her husband, and nothing is said about it. There's a scar. Every insult leaves a scar. Now what happens with the scar? Well, if you let it heal, it will heal. So with insults, there's a way that they can heal. How do you let an insult heal? You say, I'm sorry. You go over, you make them feel good, you reassure them. It is possible to heal. But you have to do something. If you don't do something, it won't heal so fast. Unless a lot of time goes by and you haven't insulted. So maybe by itself it heals. That could happen, depending what it was. But imagine that the insult is almost on a daily basis or on a weekly basis. So what happens is that there's no time to heal. One scar after another scar after another scar, and there's no reconciliation. There's no, I'm sorry. There's no good moments. Then there's scar upon scar upon scar upon scar. You know what happens after many, many scars and many, many years of scars? The hibah, the affection that was there present in the very beginning when they got married, ne'elemet, it disappears. So when you approach them, can I help you? Bring you back together so that you can continue to live as a happy couple? They're no longer interested. Or at least one is not, the one that was hurt the most. Why should I? I don't have any more feelings towards the person. Just to share the home with them, I'm not interested in that. I don't have anything to gain from it. There's no benefit. There was no respect all these years. Now he's going to change. It is possible, by the way, for people to change and to make a U-turn. It is, but it's not easy. So a lot of people don't trust and don't believe that the other half will make the necessary changes, that it's well worth their time to continue together. Early on, they stuck it out together because the children were young, which is, by the way, important, that the kids see a normal marriage, and hopefully their fights and arguments are not in front of the kids, hopefully. But let's go back one step here. If this couple would have said I'm sorry all the time to each other, and they would have tried to make up sincerely, not faking it, then there wouldn't be so many scars. So there would be some affection for each other. They would be able to sit down and look at an album and laugh. At the cute pictures, smile. They'd be able to travel together and enjoy each other's company, because at least some of the hibah, of that affection, is there. But if all of it is gone because scar after scar, and not giving it a chance to heal, then even the best marriage counselor may not be able to help them. And that's a shame. A lot of people make mistakes, but the biggest mistake is not saying I'm sorry. That's why teshuvah cannot progress without saying vidui. I feel bad. Of course, we all feel bad, but you have to express it, you have to verbalize it, and then there has to be shinui maaseh. So you have vidui, and you have shinui maaseh. Shinui maaseh means changing one's deeds, making some change in your life. But without any commitment, it will never happen. So we're getting back to what we said before. Where does commitment come from? From one's mouth. Not just one's thought. One is expressing, verbalizing, that he plans to do something. He plans to make some changes. So we see the value of positive speech in the form of a commitment. That is why the Torah tells us, when it talks about nedarim elsewhere, be careful. If you did make a neder, lo yachel devaro. Be careful to keep your promise and don't make it chulin. Lo yachel means don't treat it in a cheap way, in an unholy way. Words are powerful. And you said something, and it's something positive, of course, something that is important to do. You made a promise to do so. Keep it. Lo yachel devaro. Don't undo it. Don't treat it cheaply as chulin. Be serious about it. Because otherwise, people say things and they never are going to keep it. What does that say to you about them? These are people that are not serious. Enay mamut shidra, we say in Hebrew. I think in English they don't have a backbone. They're not strong. Such individuals don't advance in life too much. They can't make a commitment and keep it. So here you see an example of where a neder, a vow, might actually be acceptable. If that vow will get him, if that's the only way it will get him to do something. So there are various halachot, rules, which vows are permissible, which ones are okay and acceptable. One of them would be, if somebody needs it to overcome a bad habit, the only way he will be able to overcome the bad habit is if he makes a neder. Quick example. He wants to stop smoking. Nothing helps. He's seen already x-rays of black lungs. He's gone through everything. Doesn't help. But if he makes a neder, for every cigarette that I smoke, $100 in tzedakah. I think he's going to stop smoking soon. Unless he has a lot of money. For every cigarette that he smokes, that he shouldn't, $100. He's going to penalize himself. Why do you think the police put up cameras for red lights and for all kinds of things? And the penalty is hefty. You know, obviously they don't want people to cross the light when it's red, to reduce accidents. And if it's very expensive, people will think twice before they do it. Penalties are sometimes important, yeah. That may be the only thing that will hold an individual back from doing that which is wrong. So, we've been saying that in order for the man to grow, in order for him to elevate himself to a higher level, that elevation can come about through a positive dibur in the form of a commitment. You know, the neshama is pure. The neshama really does sometimes want to do something special. It's just that the physical body may be lazy, tired, not interested. So the only way the neshama can get through and win is by the power of speech. Make a commitment. And then the fact that the person is lazy will not hopefully interfere. He made a commitment, he made a neder, a vow. That may do it. You will see in the Parasha there's also a little bit of a discussion about Milchemet Midyan. Going to war against Midyan. They were a source of trouble to the Jews. They caused the Jewish people to stumble and to sin. And there's a need here to take revenge, to go to war against them. I'm not going to get into the whole idea of what this war represents, but we're told that many of the wars described in the Torah really refer to the war that we have on a regular basis with the Yetzer Hara, with the evil inclination. So, besides the explanations given for the need of this battle with Midyan, with the real Midyan, we can learn from it that this is a reminder that sometimes, in order to defeat the evil inclination or bad habit, one needs to do some sort of ma'aseh, one needs to do battle. The battle cannot just be with one's mind. Ugh, this is terrible. This is disgusting. Whether you think about it or talk about it, sometimes a ma'aseh is necessary. You have to force yourself. So we've talked about the thoughts, we've talked about the power of speech, but sometimes even those two, thoughts and speech, may not be enough. Milchama b'minyan. You have to go out and sometimes wage battle by going to war against the evil inclination, by doing some sort of ma'aseh. There's all kinds of things that we can do that may be helpful in our fight against the Yetzer Hara. Maybe, for example, if somebody has a problem with an addiction to TV. I'm just trying to think of something. It could be that he may need to remove that TV from his house. He may have to do a ma'aseh, because if he leaves it there and says, well, I'm not going to watch as much. It won't happen so easily because he will be caught up in something that maybe is interesting and forget about his promise that he made, that he's not going to waste the time watching TV. Because remember, TV, videos, movies, and all these things, even if they're not bad in its content, they're a tremendous waste of time. You can do something a lot more valuable with your time than playing games. You know how many adults in this country are playing games for hours a day? Playing. Killing their time. We only have so much time, and that time is so precious, the most precious time we have it. And a lot of people are just killing it away by watching TV and videos and internet. And that's even watching good things or normal things. Then there is the bad things. So you may need to do some sort of maaseh, some sort of act to remove it in order not to be lured every single time after time. Okay, I'm going to hold myself back. Who can fight the evil inclination like that every single day? I'm not going to watch. I'm going to turn it off after 5 minutes. It's not something that will easily happen. People who hopefully know themselves should realize that they may need to take more serious action in order to control that addiction. And that requires maaseh, not just speech. But it begins with a thought and of course with the speech, which is a commitment. But then what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? You know, some people say, I'm going to ask my wife to remind me to do something. What if she forgets? So you got to learn from your experiences and figure out what will help. What's going to help? There's a lot of halachot, a lot of rules that we have that we need to be careful with because we forget. Don't start a heavy meal late in the afternoon before you pray mincha. Before the mincha prayers. Why? Because a heavy meal, a banquet, a feast, for example, you may get carried away and drink and fall asleep and forget about the prayer of mincha. And it's passing. You know how many people have come home not prayed Arvit and were so tired they just fell asleep and they woke up in the morning on the couch. They never even went to their bed. This happens to a lot of people. So the rabbis understood the weaknesses of human beings. And they said, be careful with certain things. Be careful Friday, for example, in the afternoon, not to undertake a big job. Repair work, unless it's like 5-10 minutes. Because you may get carried away and you won't have time to prepare for Shabbat. Don't leave work just before Shabbat, because what happens if there's traffic? What happens if you get a flat tire? There are many such examples where the rabbis warn us. Don't trust yourself. Be very careful. Things can go wrong, unexpected. Now what are you going to do? So sometimes you need ma'asim. You need actual deeds to prevent yourself from getting into trouble. So what can help us with the evil inclination? A neder, sometimes. A vow could be a powerful means by which we control ourselves. When is it also acceptable and a good thing to make a neder? B'sha'at sakana. If somebody is drowning, he's in danger, nothing else seems to be helping him. Nodrim be'et sakana. The rabbis tell us that is a time that you want to make a neder. Hashem, if you get me out of this trouble, out of this mess, whether it's financial, lawsuits, jail, or illness, very, very serious illness, then I promise, I commit myself that I will do such and such that is definitely important. We're not talking about I'm going to help an old lady cross the street. I'm not talking about something minor. Something major that he may not have been doing properly or enough. I will take upon myself to learn more every day, spend more time, give more tzedakah. Something that is substantial, something that can make a difference, something that he hasn't been doing that he should have been doing. This can make a big impression in heaven, in Shamayim. Oh wow, he's going to do that? He's going to start doing that? All right, we're going to protect him. We're going to make a miracle for him. So the Rabbi says, Nodrim meta sakana, that is the time that you want to make a neder, because it could be that neder will save your life or will get you out of this tremendous trouble. As long as it's a substantial neder. Okay. If that's the case, then what is Hatarat Nedarim all about? Releasing oneself from vows. We see even from Parashat Matot that there are times that the husband may want to annul the vow of his wife. A father may want to annul the vow of his daughter. Sometimes we need to annul a neder that we may have made. That's called hatarat nedarim. Before Rosh Hashanah, that's what we do. We don't want to go to Rosh Hashanah, to the day of judgment, with vows that we did not keep. It doesn't look good. But how could you release a vow? Once you've made a vow, you have to keep it, we said. There are times that releasing a vow is possible. We made a mistake. I'm not going to get into all the details of how to go about it, but it is possible to consult with a rabbi who knows how to release one from certain vows, and it may be necessary sometimes, because many times people make a vow when they're very upset, angry. I will never step into your house. Yeah, that's a neder. Even though he didn't say the word neder, it is tantamount to a neder. Now what? It turns out that this man's daughter married that man's son. They didn't know about that. How am I going to sit with him in his house? You see what I mean? He regrets it. When did he make the neder? At a time of anger. He made a mistake. Now look at this. Here we talk about the potential to make a mistake, and so does Parashat Mas'eh have an instant where a mistake was made. Remember I said before, there's some common denominator here, and the common denominator is that potential for mistake. The potential for mistake by making a vow, especially when one is angry, or making a vow that one thought he could keep, realizing later that he cannot. And in Parashat Mas'eh you have where someone unintentionally killed someone. Imagine driving, this has happened, not seeing the pedestrian and running over him. He killed him unintentionally. What is the remedy for this? What does the Torah say in the day that we had these laws?
Go to the city of...
Go to Ir Miklat, go to a city of refuge for a number of years until the death of the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. Okay, that's a whole subject in itself. But what happens in that city of refuge? He doesn't go to jail, but he goes to a type of jail. He goes to another city, not his home city, and he spends time thinking, why did this happen to me? Why did this happen to me? A lot of people would think, well, it was a mistake, and make nothing out of it. Sir, you can't just make nothing out of it. A human being just died. Today people are so unsensitive because they hear so much about this in the news. Oh, somebody else died, so it's not the end of the world. It is the end of the world. It's very, very serious. A human being created in the image of Hashem died. We should feel bad for him or her. So here, this individual who's at fault, he made a mistake. It's a mistake. Has to think, perhaps for a number of years, why did this happen to him? To do teshuvah, to repent. Same thing with a vow. Make a mistake. Mistake in judgment. He didn't realize what he was saying. So the Torah realizes that human beings can make mistakes, and therefore offers us a way how to undo it, how to get out of it. With hatarat nedarim, with the release of the neder, which was a mistake, and with this Ir Miklat, with the city of refuge. Hopefully at that place this individual will have the time to think about what happened and do whatever it is that he needs to do to correct his mistake. Rabbi Elyahu Kin, of blessed memory, great rabbi who lived about 50 years ago, he was once seen going down the stairs and tripping. He tripped and he fell. But Baruch Hashem, he caught himself and he was sitting down. So the students ran up to him, Rabbi, are you okay? Is everything fine? He says, everything is okay. Thank God nothing happened. Then why are you still sitting? I'm thinking about why I fell. Why did I fall? You see? He took the time to think about it because he knew nothing happens for no reason. Why did I fall? Why did I stumble here? This is a great rabbi. He's thinking about why he stumbled. So that's what happened over here. In both making certain vows and in the city of refuge, in the case where somebody killed someone by accident, there's a need for hitbonenut, a need to think about, to reflect what exactly happened. I didn't think about it enough the first time when I made the neder. Now I have the time to reflect, and I realize it's wrong. I'm going to therefore hopefully release myself. Same thing with Korban Chatat. If you recall with the sacrifice Chatat, why do you bring a Korban Chatat? Because somebody committed a wrong, as an offense, bishgaga, unintentionally. You don't bring a sacrifice, for the most part, for doing something intentionally. Bishgaga. Why? Because you acted like an animal. You bring an animal as a sacrifice. An animal doesn't think. An animal has instinct. You acted like an animal. You didn't think about it before you did it. Had you studied, had you reviewed it, had you been more careful, you would not have made this mistake. You would not have committed this Avirah Bishgaga by mistake. People sometimes drink and drive. Same idea. It's a mistake. They have no clear judgment of what's going on as they're driving. They can easily make a mistake. Using the cell phone while one person is driving or texting or whatever, same idea. Many people got themselves killed or killed others because of that, distraction. So same thing, one has to be very, very careful when one uses his mouth. Getting back to the mouth. And to think a lot about what he's about to say, because what happens when the words are said, guess what? You cannot take back a word. As the verse says, words that are said are like arrows. You shot an arrow, can you bring it back? No. Once the arrow is shot, it's going to hit some target. You cannot take it back. Words that are said cannot be easily taken back. Now let's take a quick look at what happens in the non-Jewish world, especially in the political world. Look how people are willing, lashmitz, as we say in Hebrew, to insult another individual just for personal gain. They want to look better, so the only way for them to look better is by making fun of someone else, by talking about all the ugly things in that individual's life. No respect whatsoever about the privacy of another individual. It's a mitzvah for them to bring out all the garbage and all the mistakes that person may have made because they want to win the election. So everything is permissible. Almost everything is permissible. Even as long as it's true. Even though you're exaggerating, but it's true. Obviously you can't say something which is untrue. There are no boundaries. It's a democracy. You have the right to say whatever you want as long as it's true, even though it's so negative about another individual. They don't care. They don't have these rules of Lashon Hara. In the same way that the individual therefore was being asked to look at his ma'asim, to examine his deeds, to see where it is that he needs to correct, the same is true with the masa'ot, with the travels that we make in our life. Travels, stops, ups and downs, things that happen to us in our life. We have to think a little bit about them and realize that even those that are challenging for us, hem bonim otanu, they actually build us. We shouldn't feel too frustrated about these things because, yes, it's a time to reflect if it was a true mistake, but it's not just a time to reflect. It's also important for us to realize the fact that we went through it, the experience, the hard experience, is for us to learn from. This hopefully will build us. Why did the rabbis tell us, Ben Chamishim Leitzah, when you turn 50, you can give others advice? At the age of 50, you can give others advice. Yes, you've gone through a lot in life, that hopefully you're educated enough and experienced enough to share what you've gone through with others and tell your son, my son, please listen to me. Your dad knows better. No, Dad, you don't know what you're talking about. The young always think they know better. But it's not true. They don't have the experience. They don't realize that the older individual has gone through it and he hopefully knows what he's talking about. Share your advice, as long as it's good advice, with the younger generation because they're impulsive. Sometimes they don't think. Many mistakes happen when we don't think. Think a lot before you open your mouth. Think it through. Should I say it or not say it? Because later on it may be too late to change it. With words especially, one has to be extra careful because words kill. Not just bullets. Words kill. Lashon Hara can kill. You know what embarrassment does to people? They can get a heart attack from it. Words can kill a person's reputation. Words are very, very serious. So Nedarim, even though one has to be careful not to make promises all the time, It is true that Nedarim are a siyag. Sometimes they act as a fence. They're very helpful to protect us from our bad habits that we may have. It could be that that's the only thing a person has that will help him. As long as he's serious and he will keep his promise. If he doesn't keep his promise, then the promises won't help him. Just want to finish with an important prayer that we say every day after the Amidah. Some people don't even realize what they're saying. That's the famous prayer, Elokai netzol leshoni mera, usfatai midaber mirma. Please God, protect my tongue from evil, from saying terrible things, my mouth from being deceitful, mirma. Why say it now, right after you finish the Amidah? What's the need for that prayer at that point? What did we do throughout that long prayer? We've been making requests of Hashem. We've been praying to Him. Hashem, please help us with our livelihoods, with our health, with our children, with everything. We've been using that mouth as a means to express our needs from Hashem. You don't want to contaminate that mouth with lies. So therefore, Hashem, please watch over my mouth. Help me that I don't contaminate, that I don't ruin this kli, this important vessel called mouth. Otherwise, you may not listen to those prayers. Lashon hara, gossiping, slandering, negative speech, all of that contaminates a person's mouth. So how could he pray and ask Hashem for his personal needs with that same mouth? So therefore, the Torah, in knowing that people can make mistakes and say the wrong things, reminds us that it is possible for us to correct our mistakes. It is possible to do some repair work. In other words, that's the whole idea behind Teshuvah and Atarat Nedarim. It is possible, since you may have made a mistake, to repair. But don't forget, go ahead and take necessary steps to repair it, and don't just let it go by. It is serious. These days, the Ben HaMetzarim, these are the 3 weeks between Shiva Asar B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av. These are very important days that we mourn over the destruction of the temple. This is a time that we are also being asked to reflect, lidbonen, what exactly happened, what went wrong, why are we so long in the diaspora. A lot of people don't think about it. But this is also the same idea, is to remind ourselves that it is incumbent upon us to do the repair work. Not them, we. It is up to us to do the repair work to bring about Mashiach, to rebuild the third Bet HaMikdash. And that is why I remind people that there is a famous saying in English, don't burn your bridges. What does don't burn your bridges mean? You always want to have the possibility of correcting, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a mistake. Sometimes people burn the bridges, meaning that they sever complete contact with someone, either by making a neder they should not have made, or by doing something that is very, very serious that they can no longer undo. Be careful, therefore. If you want to do teshuvah, proper teshuvah with Hashem, you want to do teshuvah by asking somebody forgiveness and getting back with Him, just be careful, whatever you do, you don't burn the bridges with them. And in order to do that properly, it involves feeling bad about what we did wrong, and realizing that we make mistakes, we're only human, and don't let that ego get in your way and not ask forgiveness. I'm going to wait for him to ask me forgiveness. No, don't do that. Forget about your ego. Don't burn your bridges, and look for ways to getting back together. Otherwise, if people don't make such efforts of reconciling their differences with people, do they expect that Hashem would want to reconcile with us? We have to start somewhere, and that somewhere is between human beings. Instead of looking at the bad in each one and talking bad about them, look in the good. We all have something good. As the pasuk says, you have to focus on the good that every human being has. We're not just talking about the Jewish people. Focus on the good, not just on the bad. Whoever has a hard time during these days to mourn and to think about the Beit HaMikdash, I have one advice. Go to the Museum of Tolerance, to some museum where there's a lot of documentation of what went on in the Holocaust, a lot of movies. See what happened to those 6 million Jews. Perhaps you will shed a tear or two. People need to be sensitive. And if they don't do something to bring out that sensitivity, they'll just go through Tisha B'Av as though nothing happened. Who's going to cry now? Only somebody who really focuses on what happened and realizes how important it is for him to do something to change the situation. So if nothing helps, then perhaps go to such a museum and watch a video about how these people were killed, how they were massacred, what happened to them. Perhaps that will make him a little bit more sensitive. Let's not forget that even though as human beings we sometimes make promises and we don't keep them, it can happen too. We forget. Hashem, however, makes a promise and He will keep. He made the promise that He's going to bring Mashiach, and I assure you that He's going to keep it, and we're going to see it very soon. Amen.